The air tastes of dust and ancient secrets. It is not a quiet place, this vast, wrinkled plain in southern Peru, yet its noise is not one that human ears easily discern. It is the low hum of the wind, sculpting the pampa over millennia, the tectonic sigh of the Nazca plate grinding against the continent, and the silent, deafening shout of figures so colossal they can only be seen from the heavens. We are here, a small team of archaeologists and geologists, walking the length of a line that feels less like a marking on the earth and more like an incision into time itself. Our boots crunch on sun-baked gravel, a sound swallowed by the immense, tawny silence of the desert. Above us, a condor circles on a thermal, a black speck against the blinding blue, the only eye in the sky for centuries before the invention of the airplane. To call them lines is almost an insult to their artistry and absurdity. From the ground, they are shallow depressions, maybe a foot deep, created by the simple, patient removal of the dark, iron oxide-coated surface stones to reveal the lighter, chalky soil beneath. They are clean, precise, but unremarkable. It is only with perspective, with elevation, that the chaos resolves into breathtaking order. A hummingbird, its beak a precise lance, drinks from an invisible flower. A spider, one leg gracefully extended, seems to scuttle across the plain. A monkey, with an elegantly coiled tail, exists in a perpetual state of arboreal joy. And then there are the geometries. Miles-long triangles, trapezoids, and spirals that run arrows straight over hills and through valleys, defying the topography with an arrogant confidence. The prevailing question, the one that has fueled speculation from Erich von Daniken's Ancient Astronauts to academic symposia, is, why? But as I spend weeks here, tracing their paths, feeling the crunch of stones underfoot and the relentless sun on my neck, a different question begins to form: what did it feel like to make them? Imagine the scene, nearly 2,000 years ago. The Nazca people were not a mysterious lost civilization, they were a pragmatic, sophisticated culture, masters of hydraulic engineering who built underground aqueducts, called puquios, to tap into subterranean water in one of the driest places on Earth. They lived in the fertile river valleys that vein this desert. The pampa, this immense, empty canvas, was likely a sacred space, set apart. The creation of the geoglyphs was not the work of slaves or a single obsessed genius, but a communal, ritual act, likely spanning generations. Our lead archaeologist, Drive, Elena Rojas, crouches by a trapezoid's edge. Her fingers trace the boundary between dark and light. They didn't have satellites or hot air balloons, she says, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the spirits of the place. They had mathematics, astronomy, and an incredible, patient understanding of scale. They used simple stakes and cords. To make a straight line for a kilometer, you sight between two posts. To scale up a design, they used a grid system, transferring it from a small sketch onto the monumental landscape. It was a kind of performed geometry, a walking prayer. A walking prayer. The thought lingers. We know the Nazca world was intimately tied to water, the ultimate arbiter of life and death in this desert. Many of the lines converge on points where the water table rises closest to the surface. The animal figures, the hummingbird, the pelican, the orca, are often creatures associated with water, fertility, or the sky. The trapezoids, some scholars suggest, may have been ceremonial pathways, walked by pilgrims during rituals to summon life-giving rains from the distant Andes. The act of making the lines, of removing the dark stones, might have been seen as an offering, a way of revealing the earth's bright, hidden flesh to the gaze of the gods. We set up camp as the sun bleeds into the western hills. The temperature plummets, the desert becomes a refrigerator. Around a small fire, our team shares theories and chocolate. Carlos, a geologist, points out that the stability of the Nazca Lines is a geological fluke. A unique combination of a dry, windless climate, a stable soil crust, and the protective layer of dark stones has preserved them. Anywhere else, he says, rain or strong wind would have erased them in a century. This desert is a museum with an invisible roof. As the moon rises, a cold, silver disk, the pampa transforms. The shadows lengthen, and the lines seem to deepen, becoming grooves of pure black in the monochrome landscape. It is easier now to feel the sacredness, the otherness. I walk away from the fire, following a narrow line that points directly at the rising Southern Cross. Without the visual noise of daylight, the connection between earth and sky feels palpable, a taut, invisible string. Perhaps that was the ultimate purpose. Not just to be seen by the gods, but to create a map, a terrestrial mirror of the celestial order, a means of anchoring their world to the immutable movements of the stars and the desperately hoped-for arrival of water. But the Nazca Lines are not merely a beautiful enigma. They are also a stark, unintended monument to a cautionary tale. The Nazca culture flourished for centuries, but by around 750 AD, it began to collapse. The prevailing evidence points to ecological catastrophe, deforestation and climate change. To build their cities and fuel their society, they cut down the native Warango trees. These trees were ecological linchpins, their deep roots stabilizing the soil and fixing nitrogen. Without them, the land became vulnerable to El Niño-driven floods, which then scoured the valleys, destroying the intricate irrigation systems. The very engineering that allowed them to thrive may have contributed to their downfall. Standing here now, in the 21st century, this history resonates with a painful, global echo. The lines are a testament to human ingenuity and spiritual yearning, but the silent valleys around them speak of hubris and fragility. The Nazca altered their landscape to sustain their civilization and to communicate with their gods. In doing so, they may have unwittingly set in motion the forces that would erase them. Their message, etched so permanently into the earth, might be far more complex than a simple prayer for rain. It might be a dual portrait, a brilliant, collective mind reaching for the heavens, while its feet, slowly but surely, eroded the ground upon which it stood. On our final morning, we hire a small, single-engine plane to see what we have been walking amongst. As the plane lifts off from the dusty airstrip, the world flattens into a map. The chaos of the ground resolves with breathtaking suddenness. The hummingbird is there, perfect in its proportions. The astronaut, a strange, helmeted figure on a hillside, waves its stubby arm. The winding, intricate spiral of the monkey's tail is a masterpiece of proportional design. The geometric lines shoot toward distant horizons with a confidence that feels almost violent. But from this vantage, another story emerges, one invisible from the ground. Crisscrossing the ancient lines are the scars of modern incursions, the deep tread marks of off-road vehicles, the tracks of mining prospectors, the faint paths left by well-meaning but destructive tourists. The Pan-American Highway, a gray ribbon of progress, slices carelessly through a trapezoid. From up here, the vulnerability of this World Heritage Site is heartbreakingly clear. The very technology that allowed us to discover the lines, the airplane, also brought the threat. They survived 2 millennia of natural silence, only to face erosion from human footsteps and the wheels of curiosity in less than a century. The pilot banks the plane, and for a moment, the lines align with the low angle of the sun, throwing them into sharp, dramatic relief. They seem to pulse with life. In that golden light, the dichotomy feels complete. Here is humanity's enduring desire to make a mark, to create meaning on a scale that transcends the individual, to shout into the void of time, we were here. We wondered, we worshipped, we made this. And yet, that same mark is now fragile, threatened by the relentless expansion of the species that created it. We land, my ears popping, the world returning to its human scale. Back on the pampa, the dust finds its way into my teeth again. I look at the line at my feet, this simple groove in the earth, and it is no longer just an archaeological feature. It is a line connecting past to present, spirituality to ecology, creation to destruction. It is a prayer for water that went, perhaps, unanswered. It is a warning written in stones and shadows. The Nazca Lines do not give up their secrets easily. They simply lie there under the fierce sun, a labyrinth without a center, a message we are still learning to read, written in the only language vast enough to contain the full, complicated story of humanity, the earth itself.